Good evening and welcome to Catholic Peekskill. So glad you could join us for this public access television show. I'm Father John Higgins, your host, and it's a joy to be with you. In the years that we've had this program, we've always tried to touch on issues of interest to the Catholic Church and the city of Peekskill. One of the things to note about Assumption Church and Peekskill is the great love that the people have for their priests. It's always been that way. Even if you look back at the historical record, our parish goes back to 1859. The people have always had a great fondness for their priests, in a special way for Father James Kern, who built the Guardian building at the turn of the century. And in more recent times, everybody of Peekskill knows and knew and loved Monsignor Francis Ansbro. But one subsection of that love for the clergy is the love that our parish has had for future priests. That Assumption Church has hosted a number of seminarians through the course of these past 10 years. Many have gone on already to be priests. A few are still waiting to be ordained. And it's our great joy tonight to welcome a future priest, if it's according to God's plan. Brother Carlos Limongi is originally from Ecuador, where he was born and raised, although spent a little bit of time in his childhood here in the United States, but came back definitively with his family and found his vocation, interestingly, through a lay movement in the church. We'll hear more about it shortly, but a warm welcome to you, Brother Carlos. Thank you so much for being with us. So glad you're here.
Thank you very much, Father. Thank you for having me.
Tell us about your background in Ecuador before anything else.
Well, yeah, I was born in Ecuador, raised in Ecuador as well. I'm the youngest of 6 children.
Six.
We like to joke around saying there were no TVs at the time. Well, I'm, again, the youngest of 6. My father is a general surgeon. My mother was a social studies teacher in high school and elementary school as well. She also taught some English in elementary school back in Ecuador. And it was great joy. We had a big family, as you know, Hispanic families. Extended families are a big part of our lives, so we always had cousins, uncles, aunts, people from family, friends also coming over to our house and being part of our lives. So it was great to grow up in that environment.
What part of Ecuador are you from?
I'm from the coast, Guayaquil, which is the commercial power of the country. Yeah.
I see, because many people from Peekskill are from the mountainous area in the center part.
Yes, I hear a lot of people are from Cuenca and Azogues. These are beautiful, beautiful cities in Ecuador. Yeah.
But you grew up in a family of 6 kids. Did you have thoughts about the priesthood from the time you were a little child?
When I was young, we were always very, very devout Catholic family. Yeah, my father I always say my father never got out of bed without saying a prayer, never went to bed without praying before. So the faith was always very present in our lives. We would always pray before meals, go to Mass on Sundays. We would actually have Bible study sessions with my parents and all 6 siblings, all 6 kids. And it was a great environment again. And so growing up, I kind of wondered how it was that a priest became a priest, but it was never something that I was actually pondering as an option for my life. Yeah, that's something that came years later.
I see. And well, tell us about how that first inkling came into your heart. What was the process?
Well, I wasn't. Throughout the high school years, I kind of drifted away from the faith a little bit. Still went to Mass occasionally, but I wasn't such a faithful Catholic as I could have been. But then when I was 18, I left a retreat of a lay movement called Juan 23, which, as far as I know, started in Puerto Rico. This layman saw that for Sunday Masses, at his parish, there were only 20, 30 people tops, and this was something that was very concerning for him. So he wanted to do something to revive the faith in his parish in Puerto Rico. So he started this movement with his bishop and pastor back in Puerto Rico, and it grew immensely, and it's an evangelization movement. And years later, it came to Ecuador, and a friend of mine left it, one of my best friends left the retreat, and she invited me to be a part of it. And when I was very skeptical going in, but after I left the retreat, it completely changed my life. It opened the doors to the beauty of the church, and I was able to see all the beauties and the blessings that God had done in my life and in my family's lives. So I started persevering. I started going to their meetings. I started learning more about the Bible, about who Christ is and what he has done for us, his sacrifice, the meaning of Christ's sacrifice for us all. and it was basically working in this movement that the question started to arise as to what my purpose in life was going to be. And a lot of people here say that they always prayed, Lord, I will do whatever you want me to do. But then when I would kind of always get this little voice in my head that, talking about the priesthood, I was like, no, not that. Anything but that.
Anything but.
Anything but that. But it was still, I was at the time working. I was going to school, going to college also, pursuing an architectural career, which I actually graduated from. I have a degree in architectural technology. I was working at a firm at the time. But again, working in this movement, my focus kind of shifted. And even when I was working at the firm, I could see that sometimes I would put off doing the work that I was supposed to do, and I was researching more things about the church or reading blogs and articles and finding things out about the faith. And so this came as a big shocker for me because, this is the career that I wanted to devote my life to. But then that was taking a back seat to Christ, to my love for Christ. And so after certain years of this kind of struggling with it, I was still not ready to accept that, there was this fire burning inside of me until I went into a silent retreat. It's called a Forerunners Retreat. Forerunners Retreat. And it was a silent retreat, had perpetual adoration. And we had to go make a general confession to one of the priests that was was at the retreat.
What is a general confession?
A general confession is basically you going to confession like it was your first time, and like you have never been to confession. You basically look through your whole life.
All your sins of all your life.
Basically, even the ones that you have committed before. Ever since, you can remember all the sins that you have committed in your life, you put them again, you confess them at that moment.
Wow.
It's a great exercise because it forces you again to look back at your life and all the things that you have done. And something that was great about this confession, it made me look also not only obviously at the bad things, but at the great things that God has done in my life. And one of the things that kind of settled this whole vocation deal was that the priest told me after I was done with my confession, he was like, I want you to do something. It's like, I want you to go to the Blessed Sacrament and stay in prayer for a little bit. And after you're done, I want you to write a letter from God to you. After you're in prayer, just sit down and write a letter from God to you.
Instead of you saying what was in your own heart, what you thought God would be saying to you at this moment.
Exactly. And so it was a very cathartic thing. I was in prayer, I went to the Blessed Sacrament Chapel. I was there for a minute, and then I went to this little refectory, a little dining room that they had, and I just started writing. And after I was done, I read it again. I'm like, that's it. God's calling me to do this. Right then and there. And I'm like, I can't hide it anymore. It's there. God's calling me. He's looking at me right now, and I have to follow it. I have to pursue it. I owe him this. My love for him is so much that I have to follow this.
How old were you at that time? Were you living here in New York by then?
I was already here in New York. Yes, again, I was working at this architectural firm. I was 27 at the time, yes. And so after this, when I got home, before I started getting nervous or scared, I immediately called the vocations director.
Awesome.
I contacted him. I'm like, I have this in my heart right now. I need to do something with this. Help me out. I need your help. Yeah.
Wow. So, it was dramatic for you. It was probably dramatic for your friends and your family.
Yes, technically. Everyone saw me already as a future architect, getting registered, making buildings in New York. So it was a bit of a shock. Yes. But it was my mother, she's also very devout. My dad and my sister, most of my family in general. So they were very happy. Yes. Obviously very shocked. And I think it took them by surprise. And it was a little hard at first, but they came around to the idea. After I started the seminary, they visited me a few times, and they saw how happy I was. They saw the guys that I was a part of in the community in the seminary. They saw how happy they were, how great group of guys they were. So they're happy for me.
Was there any who said, "Oh, I wasn't the least bit surprised. I knew you were going to be a priest"?
There were people, yes, people especially in the community of Juan 23. They mentioned it to me several times before I was willing to accept it. They're like, oh, you'd be a great priest. You can do this. You can do that. You have the charisma. You have this, the personality. You'd be a great priest. but obviously I wasn't ready to accept it. So I'm like, yeah, no, that's not for me.
Did you have peace after you finally wrote that letter from God to yourself
I did.
and said, that's it?
I did. Yes, it was such a weight off my shoulders. You have no idea. There was such clarity in the vision that I had for my life at that moment. And it's funny. I have a friend who doesn't believe in God, and after I mentioned that I was coming into the seminary because I wanted to be a priest, the first thing that came out of her mouth was, "It's so amazing how people go through life not knowing what they want to do in their lives, and now you have your purpose, you have the goal, and you have significance and meaning in your life now." And I was like, wow, for someone who's not a believer, this is actually pretty deep. And yeah, thank you very much. I thanked her for that. Yeah.
And then was it long after that you applied and were accepted? What is that process like, applying to the seminary?
It was a little nerve-wracking. There's a lot of paperwork they have to go through, and of course medical examinations, psychological evaluations, which I'm still not sure that I passed completely. But yeah, no, it was actually very fast for me, because the call actually with the silent retreat came about July in 2012. And that was already a little too late to start in the fall in the seminary.
Gotcha.
So, but I still wanted to start the process. So I started all the paperwork, meeting with the vocations director, and he helped me through the whole process. And it was a great, tremendous help for me. And they allowed me to enter the seminary in January following of that year, basically in January of 2013. So it was incredibly fast for me, and I'm sure for my family as well, because I didn't want to let anyone know that I was going to seminary until it was something for sure. I didn't want to just kind of have this, be telling people about it without knowing if it was actually going to happen or not yet. So basically one of the reasons why I wasn't quitting my job right off the bat. So I wanted to, have that certainty that it was going to happen. So as soon as I got my letter, early December of 2012, that's when I started telling people. And it was only a month after that I started the seminary. So I'm sure it was also very fast for them as well.
Sure, no kidding. But when God acts, you followed, and decisively even.
Yes.
So what was it like then going into the seminary? What was that experience like? Most people start, in the beginning of the school year, in late August, September.
Yes.
You caught halfway through. What was that like?
It wasn't such a bad experience, actually. Again, like I mentioned before, there was a sense of peace that was in me. So even though it was a completely new environment, meeting new people is always a little bit uncomfortable. But I felt very at ease at it because of the peace that I already had in me going into this new path for my life. I knew that it was what God wanted for me. So it wasn't anything that I struggled with. And if anything, it was very reaffirming to be in that position and see different guys at prayer, at holy hours, and doing their breviaries and basically working for the same goal that I was working for. And it was just very reaffirming. It was encouraging and inspiring to see not only myself but so many other young guys basically hoping and praying for the same thing, that being joyful at the fact that God had smiled upon them and placed His gaze on them to follow this path. So it was truly a blessing.
I know in the seminary they make you hit the books a lot. You end up studying a lot, but you already had your architectural studies under your belt. Did you find the studies difficult? I know it's very different line of study.
It was a little bit different and difficult as well. Because of architecture is very visual. I always kid around when I talk about this with friends, because I always tell them, working in architecture, I always had my drawings online and researching some materials and calling some other person. So I was kind of multitasking and doing several things at the same time. So trying to get my mindset to kind of focus on just reading this whole chapter of this philosophy book, it was a little unsettling, because my attention was kind of a little shot and all over the place. So I had to find the discipline within myself to kind of pull yourself in, kind of reel it in a little bit, and focus on what you have to do right now, instead of just kind of paying attention to so many things all around you. So
I know the seminary environment is very much like that. It's a withdrawal from the world, and you have to cut a lot of ties. And there's still the pull of that, but
Yes.
you managed to get your head back in the books.
Exactly. Yes, I was able to do that. Thank God, and it was a great experience. I learned a lot, and I know that it's gonna help me in the future in ministry as well.
Now, I know most of the priests of the Archdiocese of New York have studied at St. Joseph Seminary in Yonkers. And your case is a little bit unusual. Cardinal Dolan wanted to do something a little bit different with you. Tell us, tell our
Yes.
viewers what that was.
Well, everyone, like you mentioned, goes to St. Joseph Seminary at Dunwoody after they finish their philosophy studies or their pre-theology studies, which is basically just fulfilling the philosophy requirements if you already have a degree. But in my case, after I was done with my pre-theology studies, I got a call from Cardinal Dolan saying that I was recommended to go to theological college and the Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C. And this was a big shocker for me because I had no idea that anything other than Dunwoody was an option for me. So I was very honored and humbled by the petition. So something that I liked a lot about the call was that it was an option for me. He was just like, it's open to you if you want to take it, and you let us know if it's something that you're willing to do or not. Or, otherwise, Dunwoody would have been the place where I would have gone.
He left you free to go or not go that
basically,
route.
yeah. So it was a great message for me because it's like you can do this. We trust you enough to make this judgment and decide where you want to go. And Catholic University is a great school. Theological College has a great reputation as well. So I took the offer and I told Cardinal Dolan that I would like to try and go to Catholic University.
So you had to say in some way farewell to seminarians who will be your friends for the rest of your life. And now it's probably a more ample view because there's seminarians studying from all over the country there at Theological College at Catholic University.
Yeah.
What was that experience like being there?
Well, obviously, yeah, I missed my friends a lot. It was also a big step for me having to say goodbye to them. But seeing again seminarians from all over the country, it was just again very reaffirming, and just to see the faith and the maturity and that desire and that zeal for the Lord, and that it's just permeating throughout the whole country. It's just a beautiful thing. It's very uplifting as well, and something that I always looked for when I encountered people who are persevering in the faith, whether lay people or clergy or seminarians. I always want to learn from them, and I feel like I have learned a lot from all the guys that are at Catholic University and Theological College, because they're a great group of guys who just love the Lord immensely to the point, of giving everything up for the priesthood, to follow Christ in His priesthood.
Wow. The time of this recording for our viewers is May of 2015, and you've just arrived at Assumption Church in Peekskill about 24 hours, roughly a little more than 24 hours. What's your first impressions of our beloved city of Peekskill?
So far, I'm loving it. Yeah, it's been great. It's a great little town, great little city. People are very warm, very, very welcoming. Yeah, everyone just smiles at you, and they're very happy to receive me. And I felt at home ever since I got here yesterday. So it's been great. I'm having a blast so far.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Now, Brother Carlos, if everything's on track and you get a good recommendation from your summer pastor, you'll be ordained in May of 2018, and you could be sent anywhere as a priest in the Archdiocese of New York. What are some of the things that you would look forward to doing as a priest so far?
Well, something that I think that it's basically at the root and the core of what the priesthood is granting God's forgiveness through the gift of confession. I think that's a beautiful gift that the church has, that Christ gave to His church, and obviously that's one of the main things that as a priest you want to make sure that people know that God loves them and God forgives them for the things that they have done. And I think a lot of the times people do tend to kind of forget that God loves them and God forgives them for the things that they have done in their lives. And I think that's one of the reasons why we want to become priests, because we want to make sure that people know that Christ, that loving Christ, that forgiving Christ, that a lot of people do not know. And a monk friend of mine once mentioned, he lived in the Bronx, and he used to work with teens in the Bronx, and he saw one of the teens one night say hello to him when he was walking around in the streets in the Bronx. And he said, oh, he just kind of said hello and kept going away. He usually stays and talks to people, talks to the kids about Christ, about this love of Christ. But for some reason, he said he didn't. And then less than a week after that, this kid had been hanging around with other kids, and he got killed in an accident. And he said, if I only had stayed with him and spoken to him about Christ, about God's love and forgiveness, he probably could have been saved. And he said, people are literally dying because they don't know that Christ loves them, that Christ forgives them. And that's something that really touched me when I heard that, when I heard him talking about this. I'm like, some of them really do not know, and they need to know that Christ loves them, that Christ forgives them, that Christ is there whenever they need
Beautiful.
they need him.
So confession would be one of the main ways that
Yes.
you feel yourself called to serve as a
so.
priest.
Yes, I think so. It's again a beautiful gift that a lot of people don't take advantage of, and something that it should be something that's brought up and made people remember the graces that you can get from it. And again, it was through that gift of confession that I found my vocation as a very tool and an instrument that God used for it. So yeah, if I can help out anyone through that same process, it'll be great. It'll be a blessing.
Now, so confession is one way you feel yourself called. Is there anything else that occurs to you as a way that you feel attracted to serve as a priest?
Well, yeah, just bringing Christ to the people in general. Yeah, aside from confession in general, just bringing Christ to the people, helping in different ministries, especially I think evangelization in general, being part of Juan 23, which is again an evangelization movement. The movement focused on trying to bring people that were away from the faith back into the church, back into the pews. And so that's also something that was very, very much a part of me going into or discovering basically my vocation. The fact that there are a lot of people who do not know that that faith, the Catholic faith, and the fullness of what it is. A lot of people, Full Nishin used to say people hate the church for what they think it is, not for what it really is. And that's why a lot of people fall away from the faith. That's why a lot of people stay away from church, because they don't know what the faith is. And so as a priest, and even working with lay people in general, you could do that. You have that access of telling people more about the church and telling them that the church is their mother, and it's welcoming them and waiting for them with open arms.
Is there anything that makes you afraid as you think forward, or a part of the priesthood that maybe gives you apprehension as you think about encountering it in the years ahead?
Well, as St. John says, love casts out all fears. And I trust in the Lord that He'll guide me through everything. Human fear could be there, but I'm putting it all in the hands of Jesus. That's all I need to do. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to do this. So it's all on Him. I'm just following His lead.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Now, some of our viewers may be young gentlemen thinking about the priesthood, or maybe a young lady thinking about a total consecration of her life to the Lord as a religious sister. What advice would you give to a young person thinking about a religious or priestly vocation?
I would tell them that if they have that voice in their hearts, in their minds, in their souls, that's telling them that this is something that they should consider, that they should look at, they owe it to themselves and to God to give it a shot. Obviously, the fact that you have it doesn't necessarily mean that you are actually called to it, but it's something that it's going to help you grow in so many ways, personally, spiritually, emotionally. It's going to help you grow in many, many ways. And it's something that they owe it to themselves based on all the blessings and all the beautiful things that God does in our lives. It's something that they should at least consider. And especially more than necessarily the kids, I think it's also a job of the parents a lot, because I think that in our culture today, parents don't necessarily offer priesthood or religious life as an option for life. And that's something that also, as a devout Catholic parent, it should be something that it should be mentioned or brought up. Yeah, marriage is a beautiful thing, but the Lord may also be calling you for something else. And I think people also often do kind of hesitate to bring it up because, what my father or my mother might say about this. But they gotta be open to the idea, and it's gotta come from them as well, as also as a kid.
Well, My uncle, who's a priest,
Mm-hmm.
always used to say, and still says, that the grace of a vocation is a grace that's given not so much to an individual as it is to a family. And I have two uncles who are priests, and so we felt that as well. You spoke earlier about your family and your friends. Now that you are several years into the process towards priesthood and within view now of less than or just about 3 years away, has it in turn affected them at all now that you're farther along on the path?
I would like to think so. Yes, I haven't. I don't like to ask. I don't like to kind of pry. I don't want to be kind of. I don't want to sound judgmental or having people think that because I'm a seminarian that they have to act differently or be differently. I'm just trying to live the faith as best as I can, following Christ, and let that example and my faith and my love for them and for Christ kind of do its own thing, and hopefully a seed has been planted in them that will grow, because I pray for them every single day, rosaries, holy hours, and hopefully that seed is being watered by all of that. And our example, and my mother and again sister and father, who are also very devout Catholic, that would be an example as well for them to see the beauty of Christ.
Well, beautifully said. Thank you so much, Brother Carlos, and thanks to our viewers for joining us here at Catholic Peekskill. We hope you come to see us this summer if you're watching. Our Mass schedule is Saturday evening at 5 p.m. and then 7 p.m. in Spanish. And on Sunday, it's 8 a.m., 10, 12 noon, that's in English, and then 7 p.m. again in Spanish. When you come, I hope you'll say hello to me, Father John Higgins, and I hope you'll say hello to Brother Carlos. Brother Carlos, thank you so much for being with us. God's blessing on your ministry. Please God as a seminarian, as a priest.
Thank you very much, Father.
God bless you. This has been Catholic Peekskill. Good night.